My mother's slap landed on my face so hard that the sharp sound echoed across the magnificent banquet hall of the five-star superyacht, leaving a burning red welt on my cheek before the stunned eyes of dozens of powerful investors. Just a second prior, she had used that exact same hand to raise a glass of champagne, toasting my twin sister for a multi-million-dollar architectural project, a project I had stayed up all night to design. I tasted metallic blood in my mouth, stumbling and bracing my hands against the gleaming teak floor littered with shattered glass. They had no idea that by tomorrow morning at the latest, the architectural firm they were joyfully boasting about would have its servers locked down, all accounts frozen, and every door sealed shut. Sterling Architects' 30th anniversary party was held on the Grand Ocean, a top-tier luxury superyacht docked at a private marina in Miami. Crystal chandeliers swayed gently with the slight waves, reflecting against the dark sea outside the floor-to-ceiling glass windows. Soft jazz music drifted through the air, carrying the salty taste of the sea breeze. Isabella, my twin sister, wearing a vibrant red silk dress, stood at the center of the banquet hall. She was the face of the company, smooth-talking and tactful, but completely hollow when it came to professional expertise. For 8 years, I was the silent shadow, the design assistant below deck, dedicated to fixing Isabella's disastrous drawings to bring in millions of dollars for the family, on a salary barely enough to keep me from starving. Everything crossed the line when the massive LED screen on the main deck projected the 3D model of the Azure Bay Eco Resort. It was my masterpiece, the project I had poured blood and tears into for 3 grueling years. But the bold text on the screen clearly read, "Lead Designer, Isabella Sterling." When Mr. Harrison, the most powerful real estate investor of the night, stepped up to ask Isabella how to handle the cross-shear force of the sea wind on the glass dome system, she froze. Isabella awkwardly mumbled meaningless words, and I stepped up. Ignoring my mother's warning glare, I fluently explained the dual elastic joint system, making Mr. Harrison's eyes light up with interest. "A genius solution!" He nodded, his champagne glass clinking softly. "Who are you? I want to see the details of your calculation parameters." "I am Clara," I said, while pulling my iPad out of my handbag. "And here is the original blueprint, digitally signed by me on the system." I didn't even get to unlock the screen before a violent force swept past. Isabella lunged forward like a madwoman, snatching the iPad from my hands and smashing it hard against the yacht's marble bar. The screen shattered, shards of glass flying across the wooden floor. "Shut up!" Isabella hissed, her beautiful face twisted with panic and rage. She charged in, shoving me hard in the chest. Losing my balance on my high heels, I tumbled into the champagne tower behind me. Dozens of crystal glasses came crashing down, shattering loudly. Ice-cold wine drenched my clothes. The entire hall went dead silent. The jazz band stopped playing abruptly. Mr. Harrison stepped back, stunned, speechless. I stumbled to my feet, shards of glass scratching my palms. But before I could say a word, my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, strode over quickly. She didn't help me up. She grabbed me by the collar, yanked me up, and delivered a blistering slap straight to my face. "Are you crazy?" my mother screamed, her eyes shooting fiery red glares. "You dare ruin your sister's most important night just because of your sick jealousy." My cheek burned. Tears welled up, but I gritted my teeth and swallowed them back. I stood there, wine dripping from my hair onto my face, staring at the mother who was panting with rage. She protected the gambling daughter who stole other people's intellect, and was willing to beat the daughter who worked to exhaustion to feed this sinking empire. Last year, she was the one who forged my signature to take out a $500,000 mortgage to pay off Isabella's casino debts. I knew, but I stayed silent. I had once hoped she still had some humanity left. "That blueprint is mine," I said, my voice deep and thick. "You two are stealing my intellect, and you just smashed the evidence." "What evidence?" Isabella spat, pointing her finger right in my face. "You're just a lowly assistant. I am the one who signs the contracts. This deck, this party, this company is mine." My mother clenched her fist, tearing off the hard plastic employee badge hanging around my neck, causing the lanyard to cut into my skin, leaving a thin trail of blood. She threw it into the pile of broken glass on the teak floor. "You're fired!" She gritted out every word, her authoritative voice echoing so all the partners in the room could hear. "I never want to see your face in my company again. Guards, drag this crazy bitch off the ship immediately." 2 massive security guards in black suits immediately stepped forward, roughly twisted my arms behind my back, and dragged me down the luxurious corridor, straight toward the deck door. I didn't struggle. I didn't scream or beg. I turned my head, looking straight into the eyes of my mother and sister one last time. They had their arms crossed, faces full of triumph and contempt, busy apologizing to the partners for the family's mentally unstable daughter. The Miami sea breeze that night chilled me to the bone. I was dragged down the iron stairs, connecting the yacht to the dock, then violently thrown onto the cold concrete pavement. My palms were bleeding. My cheek was swollen. The sound of the super yacht's glass doors slamming shut locked away the sparkling lights and thumping music of the world inside, leaving me alone in the darkness of the dock. But at that very moment, a cold, beautiful stillness began to spread through my mind. That slap had killed the last shred of humanity I held for them. I stood up and walked toward the parking lot. I drove back to my apartment without turning on the radio. The room was empty. I didn't take a shower, nor did I bandage the scratches on my hands. I went straight into my home office, pushed the painting on the wall aside, and dialed the safe's combination. The metal latch clicked open dryly. Inside were 3 file folders I had carefully prepared over the past year. The first folder: the confirmation of the loan with the forged signature, accompanied by handwriting forensic results. The second folder: all core technology patents and design copyrights for the Azure Bay project, all registered under a single name, Clara. The third folder, the most ruthless one: the certificate of share ownership of Apex Holdings. They stood on that 5-star ship and thought Sterling Architects was their kingdom. They were so arrogant they didn't know that after last year's debt crisis, Sterling was essentially bankrupt on paper. An anonymous investment fund had stepped in to buy 80% of the shares to keep the company from collapsing. They had never bothered to look into who was behind that investment fund. They didn't know that the sole CEO, the legal owner of 80% of that company's lifeblood, was me. I placed my hand on the cold papers, then pulled out my phone and called Victor. The phone rang twice before he picked up. The voice of a lawyer specializing in corporate disputes came through, emotionless and sharp. "I'm listening, Clara." "They just hit me, smashed my device, and dragged me off the yacht in front of Harrison," I said calmly, fixing my eyes on the city lights outside the window. The other end went silent for a beat. "Do you want me to activate the noose?" "Yes, initiate it." My voice was ice cold. "Lock out all access to Sterling's servers. Freeze all company accounts and Isabella's credit cards. Issue an emergency revocation order for the rights to use the Azure Bay blueprints." "What about the office?" Victor asked. "Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., I replied. "Have the security team and auditors seal the front doors of Sterling Architects. Ban anyone from entering the building. I want them, when they step off that glittering ship, to stand on the street and watch their empire vaporize." "Understood. Good night, Clara." I hung up. Starting tomorrow, they would no longer have the time to slap me or despise me. They would wake up, walk to the company, and realize that they were merely tenants in the very kingdom I ruled. At exactly 8 a.m. the next morning, I sat quietly in my apartment, holding a cup of black coffee that had gone cold. In front of me, 3 large computer monitors were streaming live video from the security camera system of the tempered glass building where Sterling Architects was headquartered. True power does not lie in screams, nor in public slaps or shattered crystal glasses on a super yacht. True power lies in a short, piercing beep when a keycard is rejected by the security system. At 8:15 a.m., Isabella's glossy black Mercedes pulled into the VIP parking lot. Through the high-resolution camera, I saw my mother and Isabella step out. They wore perfectly tailored designer suits, wearing oversized sunglasses to hide eyes that were probably still puffy from partying. Their aura remained arrogant, walking with their stilettos clicking sharply against the pavement like queens returning to their own kingdom. They were probably discussing what time today they would sign the contract with Mr. Harrison. Isabella walked up to the giant revolving glass door in the main lobby, pulled out her gold-rimmed director's card, and swiped it across the scanner. Beep, beep! The LED light on the scanner flashed red. The glass doors remained firmly shut. Isabella frowned, muttered something, and swiped the card a second time, harder. Another beep beep, and the cold red light appeared. My mother stepped closer, using her card to try. The result was the same. The facial recognition system on the glass door displayed a sharp, cold message. Access denied. Employee ID deleted. From inside the lobby, it wasn't the familiar security guard who usually bowed to them every morning. 4 men in black suits, wearing the badges of a Tier A private security firm, stepped forward. They approached the doors from the inside, but did not open them for my mother and sister. One of them taped a large notice onto the tempered glass directly facing Isabella's face, which was shifting from annoyance to astonishment. The paper clearly stated, "Building sealed. Property owned by Apex Holdings. Any trespassing will be reported to the police." Through the screen, I didn't need audio to know my mother was starting to scream. She pointed her finger at the security guard's face, yelling that she was the founder, the director, and demanding they call the police. But the security captain calmly pushed the door open just a crack, enough to slide a flat cardboard box, sealed with red legal tape, out onto the ledge. He said a brief sentence, then stepped back and locked the deadbolt from the inside. Isabella, her face now pale, lunged to grab the box. The two of them tore the tape off right on the hood of the Mercedes. What they found inside was not a letter of apology from me. It was the execution of the fake empire they worshipped. The first layer of paper was an emergency termination notice for Isabella Sterling, accompanied by an order revoking all access to the company's cloud servers. Beneath that was a legal document from Victor's law firm, officially banning Sterling Architects from using, copying, or selling the Azure Bay blueprints, along with 14 other key projects, because they all belonged to the personal intellectual property of Clara Sterling. I saw Isabella's hands trembling violently. She threw the paper down, frantically pulling out the newest iPhone. I could guess what she was doing. She was trying to log into the cloud system to download the original blueprints to her personal device, hoping to send them to Mr. Harrison to salvage some dignity. But on the right corner of my screen, the server system dashboard was already a dreary gray. Last night, immediately after the call with Victor, I had crashed all access rights. Every email, every CAD drawing, every 3D model, every piece of client data had been locked with 256-bit encryption. Right now, all Isabella saw was an account suspended error message. She had no blueprints, she had no data. Without me, she essentially had nothing. Infuriated, Isabella hurled her phone hard against the body of the car. But that wasn't yet the bottom of despair. My mother flipped to the final file at the bottom of the box, a yellow manila folder. When she opened it, I saw her shoulders slump. Her entire body stiffened as if turned to stone. It was a copy of my apartment's mortgage contract with a $500,000 loan, accompanied by a signature analysis report from a forensic expert, confirming with 100% certainty that the signature was forged by Eleanor Sterling. Attached was a small note written by my own hand with a single line, "See you at the police station or in court." They were no longer powerful directors. They were now merely property usurpers, document forgers, standing frozen on the street on a cold winter morning. 10 minutes after the box was opened, my personal phone began to vibrate violently on the table. First it was my mother. 1, 2, then 10 consecutive calls, then Isabella. She called so continuously that the screen lit up endlessly. I let it ring until it silenced itself. On the financial system next to it, a red notification flashed on the screen. Isabella had just tried to use her corporate credit card to book a business class flight. The card security system reported, "Declined, account under audit." 5 minutes later, she tried to withdraw cash at a nearby ATM. Another notification, "Declined, account frozen." Panic finally began to devour them. Through the security camera, my mother slumped down onto the cold concrete steps of the building, burying her face in her hands. The pride was gone. The cruelty from when she slapped me on the yacht last night was gone. Isabella paced around the car, screaming into her phone at anyone willing to pick up. But no one could save her. No one could unlock my servers. No one could erase the crime of signature forgery for my mother. They had robbed me of my efforts for 8 long years, thinking I would forever be a target for them to throw stones at will. But they forgot the most basic rule in architecture. The person who builds the foundation is also the one who knows best exactly which pillar to smash, so the entire building collapses in the blink of an eye. This afternoon, I would have an appointment with Tessa, my chief auditor. The box this morning was just the opening act. For the next part, I would dissect every phantom invoice, every dirty penny my mother and sister had pocketed. I took a sip of coffee, smiling as I watched the live video stream and pressed the button to completely block their phone numbers. At 2 p.m., I walked into the glass conference room at Victor's law office. The atmosphere here was completely opposite to the chaotic mess out on the docks last night, or my mother's desperate screams in front of the building this morning. Here, there was only the smell of roasted coffee, the hum of the quiet air conditioning, and a thick stack of files placed neatly on the oak table. Tessa, the chief forensic auditor of Apex Holdings, was waiting for me. She was also the only friend who knew exactly what I had endured over the past 8 years. But today, she didn't look at me as a friend. Tessa's eyes were sharp and cold, bearing the demeanor of an expert who had just dissected a financial corpse and discovered it was rotting from the marrow out. She connected her laptop to the large screen on the wall. The first image that popped up was a list of material suppliers for Sterling Architects over the past 3 years. On paper, Tessa began, her voice even. The company's money was paid to suppliers of Italian marble, tempered glass, and landscaping subcontractors, but in reality, half of these partners are shell companies. Tessa clicked the mouse, switching to a bank statement. My throat went dry. These invoices for high-end materials were actually transferred straight into offshore accounts. From there, the money was withdrawn to pay for ski vacations in St. Moritz, limited edition designer jewelry shopping bills, and especially, Tessa paused for a beat, a series of deposits into online VIP gambling platforms under Isabella's name. My sister wasn't just incompetent. She was a giant parasite draining the company's blood. She leveraged my blueprints to collect advance payments from clients, then siphoned off that money to fund her extravagant lifestyle, leaving me with a crippled budget, forcing me to exhaust myself completing projects with cheaper materials to offset the costs. But what made my heart feel like it was being squeezed wasn't Isabella. I already knew she was trash. What chilled me to the bone was the neat, thin stack of documents lying at the very bottom. This part is going to be a bit hard to swallow, Clara, Tessa said softly, pushing the folder toward me. Inside were dozens of emergency disbursement request slips, over-budget approval orders, and reimbursement records. At the bottom of each page, sitting squarely and neatly, was the signature of Eleanor Sterling, my mother. She didn't just turn a blind eye to Isabella's stealing. She had directly signed off on those expenses. Whenever Isabella needed money to pay off casino debts, my mother would sign an additional project cost order. She covered up all the financial holes caused by her golden child and forced me to work 14 hours a day to create new designs, pulling in new clients to gloss over the deficit. Let's pause here for a moment. What Clara's mother did was not merely favoritism. In narcissistic family dynamics, there's always a clear division of roles: the golden child and the scapegoat. The golden child, like Isabella, is allowed to make mistakes, to spend, to be handed the spotlight without having to try, because she is an extension of the mother's glamorous ego. In contrast, the one bearing the burden of survival, like Clara, is drained dry and labeled as problematic, selfish, or jealous every time she speaks up demanding fairness. This financial abuse is often wrapped in a toxic facade called for the future of the family. The exploiter never considers robbing you as stealing. They consider it a duty you must submit to them. And when you stop providing, they don't feel remorse. They only see you betraying the system that feeds their greed. I stared at my mother's familiar handwriting on the paper until it blurred. Last night, she slapped me to protect Isabella, but the truth is, she had slapped me with these pieces of paper hundreds of times over the years. There's one more thing. Victor spoke up from the corner of the room. He walked over, placing a USB drive on the table. This explains why Isabella was so frantically trying to steal the Azure Bay project and wanted to sign the contract with Harrison last night. Tessa opened an audio file extracted from the cloud storage data before we froze it. They were voice messages sent to Isabella by underground creditors, not banks. They were private loan sharks. A man's voice rang out, steady but chilling. Isabella, you have 3 days to pay $2 million. If you don't have a new contract to use as collateral, we will come see you. and you know we don't like talking with our mouths. She had run out of options. My Azure Bay project wasn't just a trophy of glory for Isabella. It was her final life preserver, keeping her from having her hands chopped off by gangsters. My locking the servers this morning didn't just strip her of the company. It threw her straight into the shark's jaws. At that exact moment, my work phone lit up. A voice message from Isabella? I turned on the speakerphone. Her voice no longer held the arrogant, overbearing tone it had on the yacht. It was trembling, shattered, and drowning in utter panic. Clara, please pick up. I'm sorry, okay? I know I went too far last night. Mom has been crying this whole time, too. You can have whatever you want. Take the lead designer title. I'll tell Mr. Harrison. But please, unlock the servers. If I don't have those blueprints for collateral to get in advance, they're going to kill me. We are sisters, Clara. Don't do this to our family. We are sisters! How laughable it is that they only remember the word family the moment their credit cards are declined and threats come crashing down. Victor looked at me, waiting for a decision. According to protocol, we can use this evidence to strip them of all their personal assets and quietly cast them out. Or pack it all up, I cut in coldly, my finger pressing the delete button on Isabella's voice message. The phantom invoices, the forged signature documents, the dirty cash flow statements. Print them out in triplicate. Where do you plan to send them? Tessa asked, though I knew she had already guessed the answer. I stood up, adjusting the collar of my suit jacket, feeling a sense of absolute tranquility running down my spine. One copy goes to Mr. Harrison, so he knows he was almost scammed by 2 frauds. One copy goes to the Economic Crimes Unit. And the final copy goes straight to Isabella's underground creditors, letting them know that the gold mine named Sterling Architects has officially evaporated. Victor nodded slightly, the corners of his lips curling into a professional smile. Prepare for court, it's going to be bloody. It's time they pay with their own blood, I replied, and not mine anymore. 48 hours after the beep that denied them access at the main lobby doors, my mother and sister were finally permitted to enter the Sterling Architects building. But this time, they didn't walk through the VIP revolving doors as queens, but were escorted by the security team through the side door, straight into the boardroom on the top floor. I sat at the head of the table, in the leather chair my mother once proudly called her throne. Victor sat to my right, a voice recorder placed on the table with its red light on. When the tempered glass doors opened, I almost didn't recognize the 2 women walking in. Isabella looked like a ragged shadow. Her designer dress was disheveled, her hair a mess, and the pitch-black bags under her eyes betrayed the fact that she hadn't slept, or hadn't dared to. She constantly kept darting looks behind her back as if debt collectors had trailed her all the way to the elevator. My mother, Eleanor, looked a decade older. Her makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion of an empire collapsing in just 2 nights. They stood before me on the other side of the long oak table. No one was there to order me thrown out. No one was there to slap me. Here, in this room, I was the law. Clara. My mother spoke first, her voice having lost its authority, leaving only a forced trembling. Enough. This joke has gone too far. Your sister and I have had to sleep in a hotel for the past 2 nights because our cards are locked. Unfreeze the accounts. We can talk about this like a family. A family? I repeated the word, my voice light but sharp as a shard of glass. I pushed the file folder toward the middle of the table. Do you mean the family where the mother forges her daughter's signature to shoulder a $500,000 debt? Or the family where your precious daughter siphons off construction material funds to throw into VIP casinos? Isabella lunged to the edge of the table, her hands gripping the wood tightly, her eyes wide with terror. What did you do? What did you send them? They just called and threatened to kill me. Clara, hide me. You have money. Pay them off. I'm begging you. She didn't even care about the company anymore. Her selfish survival instinct had crushed her arrogance. I won't pay a single cent for your dirty debts, I replied, staring coldly into Isabella's desperate eyes. And I also sent an exact replica of this file to Mr. Harrison. Yesterday he called me. He was incredibly furious to learn he almost invested tens of millions of dollars into an empty shell run by 2 fraudsters. However, he is very interested in the real Azure Bay blueprints. He offered to sign a contract directly with my company, Apex Holdings. You stole my client, my mother hissed, her instinctive anger rising again. She raised her hand to point at my face, but Victor tapped his pen against the table in warning. I didn't steal from anyone, I said. I am just taking back what is mine. My mother began to cry, the crocodile tears she had used to manipulate so many people. Clara, you are destroying your own flesh and blood. You are driving your mother and sister into a corner. People will look at you as a cold-blooded monster. I stood up. No, Eleanor. The people out there will look at you two as economic criminals. As for me, I am just the person who closed the bank doors. I glanced at my watch. Right on cue, the boardroom doors opened. It wasn't the building's security guards, but 3 officers from the Economic Crimes Unit, ECU, carrying badges and arrest warrants. The blood drained entirely from Isabella's face. She stepped back, bumping into a chair and tumbling to the floor. My mother clutched her chest, stammering incoherently as an officer read the Miranda rights and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. When the metallic clink rang out, locking their wrists together, Isabella suddenly turned and screamed in my mother's face, "This is your fault! You told me to just keep withdrawing the money, that Clara would never dare speak up. You enabled me. You ruined me." My mother was stunned, looking at the golden child she had sacrificed her whole life to protect, now turning her back and tearing into her the moment she fell into the mud. That was the cruelest punishment for Eleanor Sterling. She had created a monster, and now that monster was devouring her. I stood silently, watching the police escort them out of the boardroom. There were no screaming retorts from me, no tears of regret. There was only perfect stillness as the elevator doors closed, taking away all the toxicity that had haunted my life for nearly a decade. 6 months later, Isabella is awaiting trial on a litany of charges from fraud and embezzlement to money laundering. Her underground creditors were also dismantled by the FBI based on the transaction evidence Tessa provided. My mother, Eleanor, thanks to a plea deal and her age, avoided prison time, but she was placed on probation, stripped of all business licenses, and had to move into a cramped studio apartment in the suburbs. Victor mentioned that she calls Isabella in prison every day to curse at her, blaming each other for their downfall. Selfish people never know how to admit their own faults. They only look for a new scapegoat once the old one has left. I renamed the company to Aura Architecture, erasing all remnants of the Sterling name. The Azure Bay Eco Resort is under construction, and this time on the massive bronze plaque in the main lobby, my name is proudly engraved. I also used a portion of the profits to establish a free legal consulting fund for young creators and female entrepreneurs. I want to teach them how to read contracts, how to protect copyrights, and most importantly, the limits of sacrifice. Many people say I was too cruel to drive my family into prison and leave them empty-handed. They ask if I ever regret not leaving a way out for my own flesh and blood. My answer is no. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Toxic families rarely take the shape of monsters. Sometimes they wear luxurious clothes, smile radiantly in commemorative photos, and use the word family as a bottomless wallet, a bulletproof shield, and a dumping ground for all their mistakes. But a real family isn't built on fear, exploitation, or the endless sacrifices of a single person. If you are listening to this story and someone in your life is constantly hurting you, stealing your sweat and tears, and then forcing you to forgive them just because of family ties, remember this. Forgiveness does not mean allowing them to walk back into your life. Kindness is not synonymous with endurance, and love does not require you to stand still so others can destroy you. Sometimes the most valuable lesson you can teach yourself is walking away is not weakness. Walking away is the most honest act of self-respect you will ever commit. And if you stood in my shoes after years of being drained, humiliated, and slapped right in the face on that magnificent ship, would you choose to endure it to keep up the family facade, or would you slam the door shut yourself to take back your kingdom?